Hey, Brownie Bakers. We had the phenomenal opportunity to sit down with Jennifer Matthews, all-around incredible human being, the daughter of Clay Matthews, the hopeful Hall of Fame inductee. We talk about campaigning his way into Canton. He played 19 seasons in the NFL, many of those seasons with the Browns and the Cardiac Kids, and he had one of the best linebacker careers ever. He certainly deserves to be there, and we talk about Jennifer's perspective. And man, it is really cool to see her talk about his Cleveland grit, his humble personality, and his talent that exceeded so many players in the NFL. She's also a fantasy football guru, so I think she'd be proud that we talk about Thrive Fantasy, our partner with the Brownie podcast today. Man, Thrive Fantasy is the brand new way to play all your daily fantasy sports. The way it works is you download Thrive, you use our link to sign up. It's a bit.ly/Cleveland Sports Talk to earn a $10 free match on your first ever deposit with Thrive. And you pick props instead of just draft players to your team. So say you want Jarvis Landry in the Week 8 game, away game in Pittsburgh, and you want the over on him receiving 90 yards. You're going to pick him. You're going to pick the over. You're going to add him to your team, watch him receive over 90 yards, and then you're going to earn cash with the rest of your team as far as you picking the right props throughout your entire team. You can even get points for picking the under. You just have to be right. So get on Thrive today. It is the brand new way to play daily. It's so much fun. I'm having a ton of fun with it week in and week out. And again, you're getting a $10 free match on your first ever deposit when you use our link. Find our link on the Brownie Podcast Twitter at Brownie Podcast. And you'll also find our link in this iTunes description and the Brownie Sunday Podcast iTunes. Cheers. Hello and welcome into the Brownie Sunday Podcast. We have a very special show for you today as Rod and I have the pleasure of bringing in Jennifer Matthews, daughter of Clay Matthews Sr., brother of Clay Matthews Jr., and several other NFL players. Obviously, she didn't play in the NFL, but she is going to bring the analysis. We're going to be talking about her father and possible Hall of Fame induction in 2019 as that's coming up. And she's also a fantasy football guru and the director of development at Prison Fellowship Ministries in greater Los Angeles area. It's going to be an exciting show. Buckle up. Here we go. Let's see what she has to say. All right, here we go. The special edition. We're kicking it off. Rod Bloom here as always. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Chad?
Very good. We're bringing in today a very special guest, Jennifer Matthews, arguably the biggest and baddest of the Matthews family. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I don't think I'm the biggest. I'll take the baddest. But
Oh, man. So how about your brother Clay being pegged as the scapegoat for tackling penalties so far this NFL season?
my goodness, man, if the penalties wouldn't have been called, he'd be on a roll. No, I think the first week we were a little shocked, but I guess, okay, that's fine. But then the second and third weeks, even the quarterbacks, even Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins came out and said, okay, those were really generous. So we got away with those ones. So no penalties since then, knock on wood. So I think we're good to go. He had a big sack last week. So we want to stay on that no penalty, but, sack plan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the first couple of weeks, even when the Packers weren't playing, there were jokes out there, when someone would take the QB down too aggressively, it was Clay Matthews' fault, obviously.
Right. Him, the poster boy.
Oh, my goodness.
There was that funny meme, too, or the funny video that the people made from Wisconsin where it was like, how does the new sack rules? And the girl comes out and she has the ball. She drops as if she's dropping back into coverage. And then the guy picks her up, lays her down, brushes her forehead. Like, this is football, guys.
Oh, so good. Of course, you didn't make it to the NFL like the rest of the family, but you certainly know your stuff. So it's awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
So everybody out there, you can find Jennifer at JenMatthews57 on Twitter and Instagram. She's also the Director of Development at Prison Fellowship Ministries. This is a brand new thing for her in LA. So could you tell us about this and what is going on in the life of Jennifer Matthews right now?
Oh my goodness, what isn't going on right now? I'm trying to manage all of this, but yeah. So I just joined a company, as you mentioned, Prison Fellowship, and we basically serve anybody affected by incarceration. So we're trying to change the culture in prisons and then help people with reentry. So when they're out, if they are paroled, they don't make the same mistakes. We serve the children of these prisoners. So incredible. And it's very different than my other job, which is sports broadcasting. So I switched between going into prisons and speaking and dealing with donors and all of that to talking fantasy football. So I'm just keeping it interesting.
Oh man,
It all fits together somehow, huh?
I guess they're very different worlds, but I'm trying to blend it all.
Well, I like it. You have a sense of urgency. You're out there. You're getting the word out there to help these people out. And obviously, you know your stuff. You've been in broadcasting. I've seen you talk fantasy football. I love fantasy football. We talk about it plenty on the Brownie Sunday podcast. How is your fantasy team doing this year?
Okay, I don't want to speak too soon because the games aren't over for this weekend. But I'm hoping after this weekend I'll be 5-2. I started off undefeated. I was 4-0, and then I had 2 rough weeks. And really last week it was basically one person who ruined my fantasy week, which was Tyreek Hill, which I'm sure he did that to a lot of people last weekend in that game. So I was up until like the last 2 minutes. I thought I had it in the bag, and then it just fell apart. But I'm looking good this week. As soon as I heard that the Browns were trading Carlos Hyde, I picked up Nick Chubb, put him in. He had a pretty good day. So I'm feeling good right now. I'm feeling okay. But you know how frustrating fantasy can be. You think you have it all figured out, and then they, switch it up, or someone gets hurt or goes on IR or whatever the case is. But I do love it.
Oh, yeah. We all have those weeks for sure. And it's been weeks now that I've actually been holding on to Nick Chubb with the prediction that Carlos Hyde would be shipped out of here one way or the other, or he would be replaced by Nick Chubb. He's just looked too good on few carries. I mean, going into the game today against the Buccaneers, he had over 10 yards per carry, which is just absolutely insane. Obviously only on 16 carries, but what an explosive guy. So I held on to him hoping that he would arrive at this place. And now we both have him, which is great. And I certainly have Browns and Packers on my rosters. Which we'll talk plenty enough about those teams today with you, and enough about fantasy. The real conversation we want to dive into is Browns great Clay Matthews, your father, and the upcoming 2019 Hall of Fame inductions. Rod is here. I just want to now kind of sit at your guys' feet and glean this wisdom. If I'm honest, I've only been a Browns fan and a football fan since 1999. I was born in 1992. Lived in Cleveland since I was 6 years old in 1999. So I don't know enough about this, but I know you guys will talk plenty about the 3 Clays, and I want you guys to explain that to people first off the bat. So Jennifer, if you could do that, and I know Rod, you'll kind of bat into the interview process for us.
Yeah, I'd love to. I know. So I think people do get confused because they a lot of times think that my brother Clay, who's on the Packers, is junior. He's actually Clay the third. So this whole football dynasty started with my grandfather, Clay Sr. So he was a 4-sport athlete at Georgia Tech, and then he went to the San Francisco 49ers in the 50s. So he was there in 1950 and 1951, and then the Korean War was going on, and he was in the 82nd Airborne. So he left for 2 years, for 1952 and 53, to go to Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and then return to the Niners in 54 and 55. And then, so he kind of started this whole thing, because now we have 8 family members who have played or are currently playing in the league. So then if we break off from there, in my family, my immediate family, coming from Clay Jr., being our dad, obviously, we have Clay the third, who's entering, the season's well into the mix, but he's in his 10th year with the Packers. And then my youngest brother, Casey, played 4 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then signed with the Vikings, and then ended up tearing his labrum in his hip and was put on IR. So, and then he retired. And then my dad's brother, Bruce Matthews, who's already in the Hall of Fame, 19 years. He played for 19 years as well with the Oilers/Titans organization. And then of his kids, Kevin went on to play in the NFL for 5 years. Jake is currently the left tackle for the Atlanta Falcons. So he was their number one pick a few years ago. He was I believe the 5th overall pick. And then Mike played a couple of years in the league. And then he actually has a younger one, Luke, who is now a freshman at Texas A&M. So the bloodlines run deep and the legacy runs deep. But yeah, it all starts with my grandfather, Clay Sr. So there has to be something in the genes is what I'm convinced, because it's pretty rare to find all this. But yeah, so that's the story.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to have your dad and your uncle both play 19 seasons. I mean, there's not, aside from kicker, I'm sure the list is very short of guys who have even come close to that.
Right. I mean, because those are both such highly physical positions, and they both started, all 19 years. So it's it's amazing. I think growing up as a little kid, it's all I knew. So you almost, not that I took it for granted, but it was just, to me, it was like the family business. Okay, that's what everyone does in my family. They play pro football. And then the older I got, and the more just that I've been around the game of football and followed it and been a fan myself, I realized what a special thing it is and what a rarity it is to play that long and to dominate that long at their respective positions. So we've been very, very blessed.
Well, like you said, your uncle Bruce Matthews is already in the Hall of Fame, and we're going to talk about why your dad, Clay Matthews Jr., should be in the Hall of Fame in the 2019 class, which the Hall of Fame is the committee's currently looking at, and let's see, I believe there's 105 or so guys that are nominees, and they're going to cut down to 25 in November, and then 15 finalists in January, and then the inductees will be named the night before the Super Bowl. So, so let's get right into talking about your dad and some of the amazing statistics, versatility, longevity that he displayed, on the football field just for so long. He was such a great Brown. I don't know how many people I know that I grew up with or that I talk to now that he was their favorite player. He just personified the Browns defense for so many seasons, and everybody just dad. So your dad played in 278 games with 248 starts, which 248 starts for a linebacker is a record. 1,561 tackles, which is third all time behind Jesse Tuggle on us.
Wow.
And I want you to tell the story about the other record that your dad holds, which is the oldest player to have a sack in the NFL.
I know. I love that stat. So I was talking to my dad. I was like, Dad, you hold the record for the oldest player to have a sack. And his memory is so impressive. And he goes, I remember that play. It was the last play of my last game. It was against the Jaguars. And I thought, I can't even remember who the Packers played like 2 weeks ago. So I was very impressed. But when you look at these stats, well, first, I want to rewind for a second, because I do want to say, I feel like, sometimes people use the word campaign, and I hesitate to use that, because I fully believe stats and his body of work speak for themselves, and that is what's going to get him into the Hall of Fame. It's just he's such a quiet, humble man, and it's been some time since he retired. So there are a lot of people who either didn't see him play or were very young when he played. And also, like I said, because he's so humble, he will not be promoting himself or talking about his stats. Like, he's just an old school. You show up, you work hard. He played because he loved the game, not for any accolades or awards or recognized. So I just want to help kind of, bring awareness to his body of work, and to have someone play for so long and do it so well and be so passionate. And then outside of that, just be an incredible role model and representative of the league as a whole and professional athletes as a whole. It's, it's obviously something special.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, all we've done is looked at stats and everything that he's done, I mean, we really don't need to create anything. We just kind of want to make people aware of it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I mean, we've been looking forward to doing this for a while, just kind of talking and letting people know, just what we've been looking at and kind of, what to us is evidence that he belongs in Canton, and and that we feel very, very strongly about that. I just kind of wanted to let both of you guys jump in. Looking at his stats over his 19-year career, 16 years with the Browns, and his last 3 seasons with the Falcons. What jumps out to you just looking at his stats? I mean, to me, just to start off, he had 8 seasons where he had 100 tackles or more. I mean, that's a lot, and it's consistency. The fact that he was only hurt 1 season, and that was, I believe, 1982, where he missed most of the season. Other than that, he played all the time, just all the time. He's so reliable. So, you could just pencil him in. You knew he was going to be there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And the other thing I look at is sacks, because the interesting thing about the sack category is that he was basically, so he played in a 4-3 and a 3-4. He was a third down coverage backer. So more often than not, the majority of his career, he was dropping into coverage. It's not like they were just lining him up and letting him rush. So he really didn't start rushing like until 91, where they really let him rush on third down. So for 14 years, I believe, of his career, he was mainly a coverage backer. So these stats, you think, my gosh, if they would have lined him up and just rushed for 19 years, can you imagine what those stats would be? I mean, and even so, it's amazing. He's third on the all-time list, and it's just an incredible stat. And I think sometimes with football, people miss the intangibles. They just look at certain stats and go, oh, well, what about this? There's so many variables. But again, that's with him being a coverage backer for the majority of his career. So
I just want to know what his diet was so that I could employ that into my grocery shopping.
Me too. I think I need to sit down and ask him. He's got something. He does not age, because people will see him now and they're like, he looks like, actually, can he come play for the Browns? Like, he looks like he can still play. And I'm like, listen, the guy works out 3 days a week. Then he plays an hour or 2 of pickup basketball. It's very impressive. So he definitely was very disciplined and took care of himself, and, took his career very seriously. And like you said, he was like Mr. Reliable. You could always count on him being there, and he would play through pain and play through injuries and all of that. But yeah, as long as he was standing, he'd be on that field.
It's incredible, to see somebody so versatile and so dynamic to be a coverage backer like that. I mean, that's still rare in the NFL today to find a player like that. So we love having this connection to the Browns, obviously.
Yeah, and your points from earlier, Jennifer, is very well taken. I think if he were a guy coming out of college now, I think he would be labeled an edge rusher. They didn't really have that back then, so that's not how he started his career. So people will look at the sacks and try to compare him to some of the guys that were the first edge rushers, like Lawrence Taylor, and that's not, he had that ability, but that's not what he did throughout his whole career. So it definitely skews the numbers, which we'll get into more when we talk about how he compares to some other players, but you have to appreciate the fact that he had 83 and a half sacks. So he's very close to that 100 sack magic number that seems to get guys into the Hall of Fame. And he really, like you said, that wasn't his job most of the time, and he still piled up great numbers.
Yeah, I love all the film, or even how about the play where he intercepted Jim Kelly right on the goal line. I've asked him so many times over my years growing up about that play, and he said it was just so surreal. And then he said everyone jumped on top of him. He couldn't even breathe. Everyone just started piling on, and he's like, okay, guys, yeah, let me survive this. So anyways, yeah, it's it's something special to watch. And even just watching that highlight video that, I just posted to Twitter, I was like getting all pumped up watching it. I'm like, this is like the glory days. Like it was just amazing to watch him get after it, because he was quick. He could drop into coverage. He could pass rush. Like, he could do it all, truly. He not, like you said, it wasn't a day where there were specialists per se. It was like, no, he had to do everything and do it well.
Yeah, that highlight video, if anybody hasn't seen that, I guess we should probably put that out again. But it's amazing just to watch all the different things he did in that, and to watch all of the Hall of Famers that he did it to.
Yeah.
It's something else. How many Hall of Famers are in that video?
I'd have to count that up, but I was looking at that too. I'm like, these aren't sacks against, like, measly little quarterbacks. These are the best in the business. The Jim Kellys, the Boomer Esiasons, the John Elways, the incredibly gifted people.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't have the stat in front of me, but I believe the two quarterbacks he sacked the most were Warren Moon, with, I think, was it 7 sacks for Warren Moon, and I think
I think it was 7.5 against Warren.
He really didn't like him.
Yeah. And I mean, and he sacked John Elway several times too. So, he definitely didn't have a problem going up against the best in the business. He held his own all the time.
Yeah, he's like, bring it on. It's funny, right. Speaking, a little side note, but as a little girl, just because of, the mess, the nightmare that the John Elway and the Broncos created for the Browns, I remember as a little girl, at the end of my prayers, I would say, and please, God, if it matters to you, please just 1 year, let us beat John Elway and the Broncos. And I was telling some of my friends that as an adult, and they were like, okay, that's not normal for like a little girl to be praying about football and John Elway. Like, I didn't even know who John Elway was. I was like, oh no, I very much knew who John Elway was, because I knew he stood in the way of us potentially going to a Super Bowl every year. So anyways.
That's awesome.
It wasn't, obviously it wasn't the outcome that any of us wanted as Browns or Browns fans, but those teams were so exciting, so much fun to watch, both on the offensive side and the defensive side.
Cardiac kid.
That's right. I mean, I wouldn't, obviously I wanted to see him get to the Super Bowl and hopefully win the Super Bowl, but I just, I wouldn't trade anything. I just love following those teams from that era.
Yeah, it was an exciting time.
Yeah, let's talk. We've kind of talked about your dad's longevity in that, and some of the versatility, but let's go into a little bit deeper. He played in a 4-3 and a 3-4, and he played inside and outside in both schemes, I believe. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
Not many guys can do that. So let's just put that right out there. He pretty much went where the team needed him every season, whether it was, left side, right side, inside, or anywhere they needed him, and he performed well all the time. So that's not an easy thing to do. A lot of the linebackers that are in the Hall of Fame, made it there either by collecting sacks as an edge rusher or by getting a lot of tackles. Several of the guys like Lewis and Urlacher are in there as middle linebackers, pretty much played that position their whole career, I believe. So just the versatility that your dad displayed is something that, maybe the Hall of Fame hasn't known how to deal with that in the past, but I think he deserves so much credit for doing that and being a team player and playing wherever they needed and excelling constantly.
Yeah, it's interesting to tag on to this, his versatility. I was talking to my Uncle Bruce, who, as we mentioned, is already in the Hall of Fame. And, one of the things that Bruce says he took such pride in was in the weeks leading up to, when the Oilers were going to be playing the Browns, with both of them being the AFC Central, they got to play each other twice a year. And he said he took such pride in the fact that the offensive coordinator would literally create his game plans around where my dad was going to be. Bruce said he took such pride. Like, of course he wanted to win and he was competitive, but he thought, yeah, that's my brother. And he's the center of our focus as an offense, about how we're going to, prepare for this upcoming game. And he also said, back to the versatility, he was asked to do everything and he did it. Now, if you were to, and a lot of times now people are like, no, I just want to, rush. Well, yeah, I'm sure in my dad's dream world, he would have just been a pass rusher too. But again, he was that old school. You show up, you work hard, you do whatever it takes to help the team win, whether that's playing inside, outside, rushing, being a coverage back, or whatever it entailed. That's what he was willing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool that to hear that story, from your uncle's point of view. That's not something most people would know about. So yeah, that's really something. We put out several graphics of just showing you where Clay Jr. ranks. Looking at things different ways among comparing him with linebackers who are already in the Hall of Fame. So Scott Mayberry's the one who's done this. He's been a big help in helping us put together numbers and get things out there. And he put together a graphic entitled Linebacker Versatility. And what it is among linebackers with 1,000 career tackles, who has the most sacks? Well, Lawrence Taylor's up there, obviously, and Ricky Jackson. Those guys were essentially defensive ends or edge rushers that, most all of their career. So they have 142 and 136 sacks. The next most sacks is Clay Matthews Jr. with 83 and a half, and so he's ahead of guys like Junior Seau and Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher and Mike Singletary and Derek Brooks, and honestly, it's really not even that close. So, I don't know what I can say to add to that, but it just shows his place with these Hall of Fame linebackers. And
absolutely. And the thing that's interesting that you mentioned is when we look at those names you just read, LT, Ricky Jackson, my dad, Junior Seau, Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Mike Singletary, Derek Brooks, the only one not in the Hall of Fame out of all of those guys is my dad. So I think when you start to look at these sacks, we're in no way trying to say, oh, this guy's better than that guy by any means. What we're saying is, look, his body of work, his stats, he more than belongs in Canton with these guys. So I think, I think the stats speak for themselves. And the more I look at these and really break it down, I'm like, it's like a travesty that he's not in there yet. But you know what? I believe he'll be in there, and I believe that he will be recognized, because like I said, here's the proof, right? We can talk about it or have an opinion, but here are the cold hard stats. So I think Definitely. It's amazing when I look at these.
Yeah, it is hard to compare linebackers because of the different things they do and the different positions. It kind of feels, I think that Junior Seau is a kind of as close as we can get to a comparison to your dad. I think Junior played inside most of the time, but I think he actually moved positions. So it's at least close as
right.
we can get. And so we have a graphic that we put out that compares the two, and again, it's not that Junior Seau doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. He clearly does. It's the issue that your dad compares, favorably, and so many stats. He played more games, more sacks, more forced fumbles, and something that we'll talk about a little bit later, which is impact plays. So that's probably the best comparison we can make, and it kind of comes up to pretty much being a draw between the two guys.
Right, between these two USC Trojans.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody that follows you, I think I see a lot of USC stuff on your timeline.
Well, our family's it's very interesting. So my parents both went to SC. My dad played at SC before going to the NFL and being the 12th pick overall in the first round. My uncle went to SC before he went and was, oh gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. Was it the 8th pick in the first round? I'm forgetting. And then Clay the third, my brother played at SC. I went to USC. My brother Kyle went to USC and played football. And then I'm trying to think close. Oh, and then Casey, my youngest brother, went to Oregon. We kept it Pac-12. And then Bruce's kids all tend to go to Texas A&M. But we're very much a USC family, so we take a lot of pride. We had a rough loss yesterday to Utah, but Nonetheless, we
The US
shall go on. But there's an incredibly rich legacy of amazing players come out of that school, including both my dad and Junior Seau, amongst many, many others. And yeah, it's a fun place to call my alma mater.
Like you said, it's worked out pretty well for guys coming out of there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about one issue that people may point to, you know, against Clay Jr.'s, case for making the Hall, which is the number of Pro Bowls that he was named to. It'll kind of drive you crazy because Pro Bowls can be kind of arbitrary, and especially if you look in the past, guys on Pro Bowls, guys who made the Pro Bowl are typically from winning teams. Your dad wasn't always on a winning team. He had some spectacular seasons where he didn't make the Pro Bowl.
Right.
But he did make 4 Pro Bowls, which that's not too bad, is it?
No, not at all. And like you said, there's so many variables that go into Pro Bowls. It's like, look at every year. The team who has, the best record typically tends to have the most people on the Pro Bowl roster. So, yeah, I think 4 Pro Bowls is great. And I think what you would put down, I'm looking at some of the data and it's like, okay, who are some other Hall of Famers with 4 Pro Bowl selections? We look at Richard Dent, Tony Dorsett, Russ Grimm. And then when we go on to 3 Pro Bowl selections, his former teammate, Ozzie Newsome. And then we have Charlie Joyner and Art Monk. So it just goes to show that I feel like having a certain number of Pro Bowls should, doesn't, qualify.
Well, it doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
exactly.
It just doesn't.
That's right.
I have to tell you, when I was looking at this and we saw that only made 3 Pro Bowls, I was surprised. I'm thinking, wow, Ozzie was great, but
he was the man. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was playing at the same time as Kellen Winslow. I mean, I haven't looked at this, but I'm sure that pretty much any year that Ozzie didn't make it, Kellen Winslow did.
Right.
It would probably be my guess. That doesn't
right.
take anything away from Ozzie at all.
Right.
He was such a great player.
Yeah. No
But yeah,
doubt.
I mean, it just goes to show these are really excellent players that made 3 or 4 Pro Bowls, and they're in the Hall. So, again, Clay Matthews Jr., he belongs. All right, let's talk about this impact plays graphic because I love this, and I'm going to give credit. I think Scott came up with this idea. He put it into motion. I actually got this idea, I think, from Peter Jones, who's a Green Bay fan, but he is a Matthews fan, so he has really helped to put some things in perspective. He came up with this idea that Clay Jr. doesn't have that magical 100 sack mark that pretty much automatically puts you into the Hall. But look at all the other things he's done. So let's compare how many sacks, forced fumbles, interceptions, and fumble recoveries did he have. So we got this graphic together that shows, again, the top 8 or 9 guys in what we called impact plays. So do you want to go over that, Jennifer?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, yeah, as you were saying, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, and fumble recoveries. And when you look at this, to top the list, it's Ricky Jackson with 213, then LT with 195, then Derek Thomas with 187.5, and then it's my dad with 140.5. Then he's followed by Andre Tippett, Ray Lewis, Junior Seau, and Derek Brooks. So incredible company. And once again, I look at this and I'm like, okay, and every single one of those players, and deservedly so, is in the Hall of Fame. The only thing that needs to be changed is my dad needs to be added there because, as you can see, he was a linebacker that had a huge impact and made the big plays, especially when they needed to be made. So I loved looking at that, to kind of look at all the plays that really, as a defender, define you.
So could I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
In your opinion, and what makes it so difficult for a committee to look at these numbers or to look at your dad's position and not put him in there since he is in such good company? What makes it that, like, what are the factors that make it difficult for a committee to make that choice?
Really interesting, because that's a great question. I have no idea, because granted, people will say, well, you're biased, that's your dad. But if I remove
Right.
any bias out and I'm just looking at, right, just put the papers down in front of me and let me read these. I can see that he more than belongs there. Now, I'm sure the fact that the Browns didn't go to a Super Bowl, people will say, like, oh, that has something to do with it. But I'm like, why would that have anything to do with an individual's potential or ability to make the Hall of Fame? And it's very
That's right.
interesting, because anytime I've met a voter, a current Hall of Fame voter, they are obviously very familiar with my dad. They are, they're like, oh, he absolutely belongs. It's just a matter of time. And I always think, okay, what does that mean, right? It's a matter of time. And what's very interesting is when we posted the video and then the stat comparing him to Junior Seau, and again, I will reiterate, so this isn't misconstrued, that we are absolutely, Seau belongs in there. Like, he is more than deserving. What we're saying is that my dad also belongs in there. And my brother Clay retweeted the thing I'd posted, and was in it. This is a really cool story. And was in a pre-production meeting leading up to, I think, the game against the Bills. And Dan Deerdorf came in. He was going to be calling the game. Oh my gosh, I had no idea that your dad's stats were like, I mean, they're incredible. Like, he has my vote. And Clay at first was like, it was out of the blue. He said, I didn't know about your dad's stats. And Clay was like, oh, and then he's like, oh, okay, yeah, the tweet I put out. And he was saying, he goes, gosh, I had no idea, which made me think, I was talking to my brothers about this, that how many other voters are there out there that know he belongs, but just need to be reminded of his incredible body of work and incredible stats. And the fact that, like, hey, put him, compare his stats to all the top linebackers who are currently in the Hall of Fame, and he fits right in. He's at the top of the list, if not like 3 down. So that's, I think, maybe the only holdup. But I personally don't, not going to a Super Bowl. That's a team, that's affected by the whole team. You can only control so much at one position.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially when there's 50 plus guys on the team. How can you hold that against one player? I mean, there's you just looking at baseball, and there's guys that never made it to the World Series that are just such great players, and it's not held against them. And there's less guys on a baseball team,
right?
So it absolutely should not be held against him.
Yeah, and I think even with some of the, like, Pro Bowl selections, let's look at 1984. Okay, the team was 5-11, rough year, right? But he had 126 tackles, 12 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles, and he still didn't make the Pro Bowl. Can you imagine a guy nowadays, like currently in 2018, if Clay had 126 tackles, 12 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles, make the Pro Bowl? I mean, it would be like unheard of. I mean, people would be like, those stats, I mean, that's like auto entry to the Pro Bowl. So I look at some of those stats and I think, oh, I can see where some of the Browns' struggles throughout the years or not making a Super Bowl is, I feel like, has been the only reason that I can even come up with as to why he's not already in. And like I said, and secondly, and to reiterate what I said at the beginning, he's such a humble, old school man, that he's not, I mean, he likes social media probably as much as Bill Belichick. He is like, I'm sure he probably couldn't even name all of them correctly. I'm sure he'd be mixing them up, Instaface and Twitter story, but he's not going to be a guy who talks about what he did. And he, he's just a humble man. So I think sometimes, unfortunately, that can work against him, but something like that shouldn't. So that's why, again, we're just working to bring awareness to his stats. And as we go over some of them, I think people can see, and a lot of people, even people close to my family, as I've posted things, are like, I knew your dad was an amazing player, but I had no idea that he was of this caliber. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not just saying that. I have the stuff to back it up. So that's, it excites me because I believe he will be inducted. And I think what a special time for the city of Cleveland, the state of Ohio as a whole, with the Hall of Fame being in Canton, a few hours away. Just something so positive to celebrate, and a guy who, not only on the field but off the field, was an upstanding citizen, a great man, and a good representation of an amazing city, of a hardworking city, a blue collar city. Like I feel like he was a perfect fit for that, for that team and that city.
I have to agree with you 100%. I mean, yeah, he was exactly the kind of player. I mean, I think that's why people love your dad so much. He personified the city, the work ethic of the city, and just what the city wanted to see from players on their team. Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of fun watching him play, week in and week out for so long.
So long.
It's just, I mean, it's hard to really grasp the fact that he played for 19 seasons. Guys just don't do that.
Even my brother, I've talked to my brother Clay about it, Clay the Third, and he's like that. Like his first few years in the league, he's like, I don't know how Dad did this for 19 years. He goes, I mean, that is like, he has a newfound respect, obviously, since, he's in his 10th year in the NFL, and he's, he'll be the first to say he models his play after my dad. And, I think, and even looking back, we were talking about this before, I think looking back at even some of the coaches he played for, Bill Belichick, Marty Schottenheimer, Nick Saban. I mean, these are guys who've gone on to be the top in their game. And I want to get in touch with Bill Belichick. I'm going to try to get in touch with him to see what he has to say about my dad, because he's been very complimentary in the past. And I know that these people saw the talent, saw the potential, and kind of knew what they had. They had a good thing. And again, he was playing against guys like, my dad was going up against guys like Earl Campbell and Barry Sanders. And again, the quarterbacks that we mentioned, the Jim Kellys, the Boomer Esiasons, the John Elways. Like, these were some of the best players of all time. I mean, even comparing them to guys today that could, stand on their own. So.
Yeah. And people can look at the stats, but he played 19 seasons, and just for anybody that doesn't know, in his 19th and final season at the age of 40, he had 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Okay. There wasn't some drop off at the age of 33 or 35 when he just hung on. He was an impact player up to the end.
You know what's so funny? I'll never forget his last year. They were playing, I believe it may have been the last home game. This was when the Falcons were still in the Georgia Dome. And, we had come from 16 years in Cleveland, go to Atlanta. We're in this dome. And I'm like, this feels like they're playing in a living room. Like, it was just strange. I was so used to Cleveland Municipal Stadium and being out there near the lake. But anyways, he recovered a fumble, and he's running down. He stiff arms this guy, just straight, puts his arm out. The guy falls. He keeps going. And they happen to have mic'd June Jones, the then head coach of the Falcons. And he goes, man, I love it. 40 years old, stiff arming guys. And Craig Ironhead Hayward, who was on the Falcons with him, said, I want to know what your secret is. Like, what are you drinking? What are you eating? Like, what is it, man? Because I want to, I want some of that. But I'll never forget that, just that stiff arm. And then and he's just going, and this is at 40. So like you said, it's not like his play dropped off and he was just kind of hanging on, going in every few plays. This is, someone who played at the top of the game for all those years. So many good memories. It makes me happy talking about it. It's just such an incredible career, and we're so lucky and so thankful and just so blessed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I loved watching your dad, all those years, I would say, I probably started following the Browns around 1980. So, and I think, I don't think your dad played a lot the first season, but, he was kind of just really coming of age when I started following. So, yeah, just great memories and just a great player, and
yeah.
We've had a lot of help on this. I just wanted to name again some of the people that have helped us kind of behind the scenes. Menachem Ikovitz is writing the article version of this podcast. So I encourage everybody to read that. That'll probably be out this week, and that way you can take a look at some of the graphics. we'll post that, and I'm sure Jennifer will put that out as well so that everybody can see it. But just kind of let's all those numbers sink in so everybody can see them. Peter Jones, the Packers fan who's really helped us, kind of look at things, with a positive perspective. Steve Daggers helped out with just some research for me. Scott Mayberry's done a lot of these graphics, been a great help. And Jennifer, you've worked with Tony Grossi, who's helping with the, just I think with kind of the distribution and
right.
hopefully, to the voters. So everybody's been key. And again, all we're doing is just kind of reminding everybody about what your dad did. None of us have done anything special to make him worthy of the Hall of Fame. He was already worthy of the Hall of Fame.
Right. And thank you for bringing all those amazing people up. You guys are so awesome. We're just so grateful. I just love that people have come together and, like you said, just to help bring awareness to the body of work that he produced, that he laid it out there, and now we're just trying to make people aware of that. So it's been a fun team effort. So the celebration will be all the sweeter, right?
Most definitely. Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
And I would hope, since it's in Canton, that Browns fans would show up in droves rocking old school 57 jerseys. That would make me so happy.
I can't even imagine what it's going to be like when it happens.
Yeah. Wow. Got the chills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've kind of covered a lot of stuff. Do you have final thoughts you want to share, Jennifer?
Goodness. I mean, I feel like we've kind of covered all of it, and just to go back to, like I said, I mean, I feel like sometimes I look over the stats and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious to me. And they are, but he's a deserving man. And when you look at what the NFL and what the Hall of Fame want to stand for and what they communicate that they want to be represented by, that's my dad. That's someone who showed up, he worked hard, he did what was asked of him. Even if he would have preferred to do something else, that didn't matter. He, whatever was best for the team, he did it well. Every different type of role they put him in, every different position they put him in, and did it humbly. And like I said, represented the amazing city of Cleveland, which we love so much, and the Browns organization, which we root for to this day. Just represented them with class and honor and respect and dignity. And, I can't wait to see him take his place in Canton. And just, I think it'll be, like I said, not only special for our family and for my Uncle Bruce, who said the only thing that was missing when he was put in the Hall of Fame and that upset him was the fact that my dad wasn't already in there. And he said that in his Hall of Fame speech. And basically, if you go back and find my uncle's Hall of Fame speech, I should dig that up. He spent about half of it talking about how my dad was his idol. He modeled his play after. He was the one, like I said, that the Oilers game planned against. Wow. My uncle wanted to be like my dad, and even though they played on different sides of the ball, that was also special because they got to go up against each other. And we have some pretty cool videos of that, and they mic'd him up a few times, but nonetheless, I can't wait for him to take his place. It's long overdue. I know we all believe that, and so many of thousands and thousands of people who've reached out and interacted and shared stories. Like, thank you so much for your stories about watching him play, or where you were during a certain game, or where you were during the play when he intercepted Jim Kelly on the goal line, or I get the chills, and it's so fun for me to share that with him because, like I said, he's not on social media, so it's so fun. And he always so humbly says, well, I fell into a few plays here or there. That's his response, Mr. Humility. Well, I fell into a few plays here or there. But
awesome.
Yeah, and that all the more you just think, my gosh, like let's make this right, and give Cleveland and the Browns and so many people something amazing to celebrate. And we will celebrate till the cows come home. It'll be so, so special.
That's right. It's been great talking about it. I'm going to kick this back to Chad and let him close us out.
Yeah.
All right.
Jennifer, we're so grateful to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today, really.
Oh, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I'm like, I was so pumped, and I'm just grateful, Rod, for the work you've been doing, and I'm honored to be on here. So thanks for taking time, to talk to me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this has been a phenomenal conversation for definitely Rod and I about a man who exemplified Cleveland grit, humbly, a talented man who should be sliding headfirst into the Hall of Fame in Canton, and we all hope to see that. And you know what? We're going to be praying for Clay. Just as you prayed that John Elway would get out of the way, we are going to pray that Clay would get in.
I appreciate those prayers.
That's what we can do. Yeah, so everybody, again, this has been Jennifer Matthews on with us, Director of Development at Prison Fellowship Ministries in LA. She's a fantasy football guru, an amazing broadcaster, an all-around incredible human being. So thank you so much for listening with us today. Subscribe, rate, review the Brownie podcast on iTunes, and follow Jennifer at JenMatthews57 on Instagram and Twitter. This has been the Brownie Sunday Podcast. Cheers.